In the year 1522, the Mediterranean was a lake of fire, but in the middle of this Islamic sea stood a single, defiant rock of stone and steel, Rhodes. For over 200 years, it had been the home of the Knights of St. John, last of the Crusaders. They were the elite of Europe, warriors who had forgotten how to surrender, but now, the greatest army on earth was coming to erase them from the map. They were the sovereign military order of Malta, better known as the Knights of Rhodes. These were not mere soldiers. They were monk warriors, sworn to poverty, chastity, and the total destruction of the Ottoman Empire. To the Sultan, they were pirates who raided his trade ships and enslaved his pilgrims. To Europe, they were the shield of Christendom, led by the iron-willed Grand Master Philippe Villiers de Lisle, Adam Savan-Moot, and a few thousand locals prepared for the impossible. They had spent decades turning Rhodes into the most sophisticated fortress in the world. Its walls were 20 feet thick, its bastions angled to deflect the heaviest cannonballs. They knew the storm was coming. They just didn't know how massive it would be. In Istanbul, a young sultan had just taken the throne, Suleiman, later known as the Magnificent. His father had conquered the east, and now Suleiman looked west. Belgrade had already fallen to his cannons, but Rhodes was a thorn in his side, a constant insult to his power. Suleiman was a poet, a lawgiver, and a strategist. He didn't just want the island, he wanted the legend of the knights destroyed. He gathered a force that defied imagination, 400 ships and nearly 100,000 men. Among them were the Janissaries, the Sultan's elite infantry, and thousands of specialized miners from the Balkans, designed to turn the ground beneath the knights into a grave. June 26, 1522. The watchers on the St. Nicholas Tower rang the bells. The Ottoman fleet had arrived. From the battlements, the knights looked out and saw the sea disappear under a forest of masts. It was the largest invasion force the Mediterranean had ever seen. Suleiman himself arrived soon after, setting up his golden tent on a hill overlooking the city. He offered the knights a choice: surrender and leave with your lives, or stay and watch the city be ground into dust. The Grand Master's response was silent. He simply ordered the gates of the harbor to be closed with a massive iron chain. The dialogue was over. The steel would now do the talking. Suleiman unleashed a bombardment that shook the very foundation of the island. But as the smoke cleared, the Ottomans realized that the walls of Rhodes were unlike anything they had ever faced. To win this war, they wouldn't just have to climb the walls, they would have to go under them. For weeks, Ottoman cannons roared day and night. The city was being hammered by stones weighing hundreds of pounds. But the knights had a secret weapon. Gabriele Tadino, the greatest military engineer in Europe. He had built Cavalier batteries platforms that allowed the knights' cannons to fire over their own walls, raining death on the Ottoman trenches. Every time a wall was breached, the knights worked through the night to build a new one behind it. The siege had become a stalemate of blood and dust. Suleiman changed tactics. If the walls wouldn't fall from above, they would explode from below. He sent his Balkan miners to dig dozens of tunnels under the bastions. It was a terrifying, claustrophobic war. The knights responded by placing bowls of water and bells on the ground. When the water rippled, they knew where the Turks were digging. Counter-tunnels were dug. Men met in the pitch black, fighting with daggers and bare hands in the bowels of the earth. It was a nightmare of fire and collapsing earth, where a single spark could bury hundreds alive. September 4th, a massive mine exploded under the English bastion, collapsing a huge section of the wall. Thousands of Janissaries surged into the gap, screaming the name of Allah. The Grand Master himself rushed to the breach, pike in hand. For hours, it was a meat grinder. The white cross against the red crescent. The knights fought with the desperation of men who knew there was no retreat. They pushed the Ottomans back, but the cost was staggering. The elite of Europe were bleeding out on the sun-scorched stones of Rhodes. Suleiman was losing thousands of men every day to disease and the sword. His generals were whispering about a retreat. But just as the Sultan was losing hope, a message arrived from inside the city. There was a traitor among the knights, and he was about to tell the Sultan exactly where the fortress was weakest. In the heart of the Mediterranean, a tiny island fortress stood as a thorn in the side of the mighty Ottoman Empire. This was Rhodes, the last Christian bastion in the east, held by the legendary Knights Hospitaller. For centuries, these warrior monks had defied sultans and raided Ottoman shipping lanes, a constant challenge to the empire's dominance. But in 1522, a new sultan, young, ambitious, and determined, set his sights on this defiant island. His name was Suleiman, and he would soon be known to the world as the Magnificent. Suleiman wasn't just another ruler. He was a brilliant military strategist and a man of immense resources. He arrived at Rhodes not with a small army, but with an overwhelming force. Imagine this: a fleet of 400 ships and an army of at least 100,000 men, maybe even more, descending upon an island defended by just 7,000 knights and local militia. The odds were staggering, a true David versus Goliath scenario. But this David was clad in steel and faith. The siege began in the sweltering heat of late June. The Ottoman cannons, the most advanced of their time, roared to life, unleashing a relentless barrage against the fortress walls. Day after day, the stone fortifications that had stood for centuries were pounded into rubble. The air was thick with smoke, the ground shook with explosions, and the noise was deafening. The knights, led by their stoic Grand Master, Philippe Villiers de Lisle, Adam, fought with a ferocity born of desperation. They repaired breaches under fire, launched daring counterattacks, and repelled wave after wave of attackers. The Ottomans threw everything they had at the defenders. Elite janissaries stormed the walls. Miners dug tunnels to plant explosives beneath the ramparts, and artillery bombardments were ceaseless. Yet, for months, the knights held on. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely cut off from any hope of reinforcement. Their food supplies dwindled, ammunition ran low, and their numbers were decimated by combat and disease. The streets of Rhodes ran with blood, and the defenders grew weary, their bodies broken but their spirits defiant. Suleiman watched, growing increasingly impatient. He had expected a quick victory, a swift crushing of this Christian outpost. Instead, the siege dragged on for 6 long months. The winter was approaching, and his own army was suffering from the harsh conditions and heavy casualties. He had lost tens of thousands of men trying to take the fortress by storm. He admired the courage of his enemies. Their resilience was something he, as a warrior, could respect. It was then that Suleiman decided to change his strategy. Instead of continuing the bloody assault, he offered terms. He sent a message to the Grand Master, offering a deal that was almost unbelievable. He proposed that the knights could surrender honorably. They would be allowed to leave Rhodes with their weapons, their religious artifacts, and any civilians who wished to depart with them. They would be given ships and provisions for their journey. Those who chose to stay could continue to practice their Christian faith without interference. It was an offer of incredible magnanimity, especially in an age known for its brutality. The Grand Master, Lisle Adam, was faced with an impossible choice. His men were exhausted, and the city was on the brink of collapse. There was no hope left. To continue fighting would mean the certain death of everyone within the walls. Reluctantly, he accepted Suleiman's terms. On Christmas Day, 1522, the cannons finally fell silent. What happened next is what truly cements this story in history. As the defeated knights prepared to leave the island they had called home for over 200 years, Suleiman the Magnificent made a personal gesture that stunned everyone. He rode, not in triumph, but with a small escort to meet the 78-year-old Grand Master. He didn't gloat or humiliate his vanquished foe. Instead, he offered words of comfort and respect. According to chronicles, Suleiman told his own viziers, "It is not without regret that I am forcing this brave old man to leave his home in his old age." He praised Lisle Adam for his valiant defense and expressed genuine admiration for the knight's courage. This wasn't just for show. It was a profound act of chivalry from one great leader to another. Suleiman proved that he was more than just a conqueror. He was a statesman who understood the power of mercy and respect. The Siege of Rhodes ended not just with a military victory, but with an act of grace that has echoed through the centuries. A surprising moment of humanity in the midst of a brutal war. It's a powerful reminder that even in conflict, true strength can be found in magnanimity. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more. In the heart of the Aegean Sea, a story of incredible courage and unexpected honor unfolded. The year is 1522. The mighty Ottoman Empire, led by the legendary Suleiman the Magnificent, has laid siege to the island of Rhodes for 6 long months. Inside the fortress walls, a small band of knights, the Order of St. John, known as the Knights of Rhodes, are holding out against impossible odds. Imagine this: a massive army of over 100,000 soldiers against just a few thousand defenders. The Ottomans pound the walls with cannon fire day and night. Mines explode beneath the ramparts, and wave after wave of elite janissaries charge into the breach. Yet, for half a year, the knights refuse to yield. They fight with a ferocity born of faith and centuries of tradition, patching up walls, repelling attacks, and praying for a miracle that never comes. Their Grand Master, a seasoned warrior named Philippe Villiers de l'Isle Adam, is the heart and soul of the defense. At 70 years old, he's seen it all, and he inspires his men to fight with the courage of lions. But courage has its limits. Supplies are dwindling, the walls are crumbling, and their numbers are falling fast. The city's civilians are starving and begging for an end to the bloodshed. L'Isle Adam knows the fight is lost. The choice is stark: surrender and save his people, or fight to the last man and see everyone perish in fire and slaughter. With a heavy heart, he chooses honor. On December 20th, 1522, L'Isle Adam walked into the enemy camp to face Suleiman the Magnificent. He expected a conqueror's fury, perhaps execution. Instead, he found respect. Suleiman, one of history's most powerful rulers, didn't see a defeated foe. He saw a fellow warrior, a man of incredible bravery. The terms he offered were astonishingly generous. The knights could leave Rhodes with their weapons, their sacred relics, and their dignity intact. The people of Rhodes could choose to stay or leave, and their churches would be protected for 5 years. There's a famous story from that day. As the old Grand Master left the tent, Suleiman turned to his vizier and said quietly, "It truly saddens me to force this brave old man from his home." It was a moment of profound respect between two great leaders, a testament to the idea that honor can be recognized even in an enemy. On New Year's Day, 1523, the last of the knights, just 180 of them, along with thousands of civilians, boarded their ships. They carried the bones of their saints, the icons from their churches, and the tattered banners of their order. As they sailed away from the harbor, they watched the Ottoman flags rise over the towers they had defended with so much blood. It was the end of an era. The last Crusader stronghold in the east had fallen. For 7 long years, the knights were homeless wanderers, an order in exile. They sought a new home, a new rock to call their own. Finally, the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, gave them one, the barren island of Malta. It was here they would rise again, building an even more formidable fortress and creating a new legacy as the Knights of Malta. And just over 40 years later, in 1565, they would once again face the full might of the Ottoman Empire in the Great Siege of Malta, one of the most legendary defenses in all of history. But they never forgot Rhodes. It was on Rhodes that they had proven that defeat does not mean dishonor. It was there that their courage earned the respect of a sultan. Today, if you walk through the old town of Rhodes, those massive walls still stand. They are a silent monument to a time when faith was carved in stone and glory was measured in courage. Suleiman conquered the island, but the Knights of Rhodes kept their honor. Their story echoes through history, a powerful reminder that some fortresses are built not just with stone and mortar, but with the unyielding strength of the human spirit. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story of courage and honor, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from history. See you next time.